You're listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College in Garden City, New York. I'm Bill McIntyre here with Jon Gallo for another edition of this week's Long Island News, the news show that brings you news stories about Long Island and about Long Islanders. And now we're very happy to welcome back to the show New York State Assemblyman Ed Ra. Assemblyman Ed Ra represents his constituents of the 19th State Assembly District, which includes portions of all three Nassau County towns, from New Hyde Park to Brookville, including right here at Nassau Community College. He currently serves on the Rules Committee, is the ranking minority member of the Assembly Ways and Means, as well as the Education Committee. All reasons why we're very happy to have him here right now. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys today?
Yeah, well, good.
We're doing good. Got good weather, and hope we have a good conversation here. We want to thank you again for joining us. I know quite a bit has changed since we spoke last year, but one thing hasn't. You're certainly busy, as always, both in Albany and in the district on behalf of your constituents. So we wanted to really start by getting your thoughts on this year's budget process. We know that the governor has her priorities. The Assembly has released their one House bill version of it, and there have been hearings, and there are some more expected to go on in the next weeks. So can you tell us where things stand and your big picture thoughts before we kind of get more granular on infrastructure, et cetera?
Sure. So the governor put out her executive budget proposal back in January. We had our series of hearings. Really, it was, a pretty robust spending plan. Met a lot of priorities, a lot of things that people have talked about for a long time. We went through the hearing process, like I said. One of the real points that got a lot of attention down on Long Island was this accessory dwelling unit proposal, which the governor ultimately, which basically would have, kind of overrode local zoning. So it was very unpopular with, local governments. And thankfully, the governor has removed that proposal from the budget at this point. And then earlier this week, actually, both houses, the majorities in each house, put forth and passed their one House budget, which is essentially each of the majorities' version of the budget, which kind of draws the lines for the final negotiations here. They did add a lot of money in terms of overall spending. Largely, it came from something that I thought the governor was very responsible with doing in her proposal, which was putting money into our reserves, because we have had very great, tax receipts coming in, but we don't know how long that's going to last. And we don't want to put ourselves in a situation that all of a sudden things go down and things end up on the chopping block. Both majorities did pull a significant portion to the tune of billions of dollars, over $5 billion in the Assembly, to put into some other spending programs. So that's kind of where the stage is set at this point. And we're, about 2 weeks or a little less than 2 weeks away from our budget deadline.
Oh, yeah. So I know those will be a busy 2 weeks, certainly. And like you said, the ADU's conversation, that was a very kind of heated but productive, it looks like, dialogue, because ultimately, like you said, that was pulled, and that is kind of being receptive to the input of a relatively bipartisan delegation out here on Long Island. So that said, other issues like schools and colleges, of course, which we are always concerned about here at Nassau Community College. I know there's a lot of funding, for various different things, like maybe expanding TAP, like SUNYs and CUNYs. So you can talk about a little bit about that. What might people can expect, in terms of education, but also the high schools even. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So on the elementary and secondary education side, there's a proposal to fully fund foundation aid, which is a formula that dates way back, to a lawsuit years ago. So that's a good thing. It's been talked about for a long time, and looks like it may be finally fully funded this year and next, and then we can finally move forward on maybe some revisions that have to happen to reflect, some changes in student enrollment and even changes in what type of expenses schools have now as opposed to 15, 20 years ago. Yeah. In terms of higher education, there are some proposals to expand the maximum TAP award, which is important because it has not expanded along with tuition over the years. raising the maximum income threshold, which is something I've supported for many years because that also has been stagnant. And a proposal that I think is really important with regard to part-time TAP students who go part-time and in the past didn't meet the criteria to get that aid, which is very important, in particular for the community colleges. And then one of the other pieces of it that has been a real point of discussion is the community colleges obviously have suffered from some declines in enrollment. There's a proposal in this year's budget that would basically set a funding floor based on enrollment of last year. One of the talks and, the advocates, on the college level, and certainly I think it's appropriate, is that we actually look back and use the floor 2018, 2019, basically the last year that was unaffected by the pandemic, because we think that's a more accurate picture of the funding that the colleges need and deserve to preserve their programs.
Yeah, certainly music, I'm sure, to many here at NCC's ears. The idea of trying to help, like I said, drive more people to our great university and, go on to help the community in other ways here, of course, on the island. Another issue I know that you've certainly been focused on and, came back into the news recently because the comptroller released a report around the nursing homes and the fatalities from COVID was long-term care. So it seems to be that there's a lot of discussion about maybe some additional funding for long-term care and, public health measures, especially with seniors, to try to, when they're in a long-term care or, trying to keep them out of them as well. Can you speak to those kind of proposals?
Sure. There's really within that entire sector, there has been a need for years that has been unmet in terms of just providing adequate wages so that there is a solid workforce. And whether it's working with, the elderly in home care, whether it's working with adults with developmental disabilities, that entire sector has really been hard hit and almost in a crisis mode for a number of years. So there are proposals to really give a large COLA increase, cost of living increase across that sector, which would be helpful. And I think many of us recognize it's a great kind of shot in the arm in the short term, but it needs, continued investment so that, the wages are appropriate so that people aren't, really, if you think about it, these are not easy jobs and, they lose people to fast food and stuff like that because of, the way wages have gone up over time. So we need to invest in that sector.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, definitely important. I'm sure for a lot of families listening. And I know another, issue related more to the schools was the special education. Knowing that a lot of people need, kind of personal attendance to help, with the education process and just with the, daily kind of activities to an extent. So certainly, we're going to be monitoring that conversation. I know we have great institutions like the Piscardi School out here, I believe, in your district. Absolutely. And others. Yep. So certainly, we definitely echo those important kind of issues. But maybe turning to an issue that you're involved with today. I know you're going to be at a press conference on infrastructure. There was a report in Newsday about some kind of infrastructure that really is a little bit maybe suboptimal, but overall the picture doesn't look as bad on the island as it might in some other parts of the state. But can you talk about what infrastructure funding might be in this that hopefully could help Long Islanders? I know there was talk about like POPs, I believe, pave our potholes, some other things. So just I guess your thoughts and what events today you're a part of.
Yeah, so I'm out here actually. We're having a press conference with the Long Island Contractors Association regarding infrastructure funding and a push for increased infrastructure funding in this year's budget. Obviously, we have the recent federal bill that is going to bring a lot of money to Long Island for infrastructure, which is great. Thankful for our federal representatives on a bipartisan basis who passed that bill and that funding. And we're talking about, the state also making investments, since we are in a place where there has been, we're in a good financial position. We want to make continuing investments. We have both on the Department of Transportation side, there is a capital plan that we think more money can go into. That's going to directly impact, state-owned roads. Many of our highways that that we travel on a day-to-day basis, which, whether it's Northern State, Southern State, Meadowbrook. I know many of our, LIE, many of our my constituents certainly travel those roads daily, and I've heard plenty about them, and even Jericho Turnpike, Hempstead Turnpike, just a lot of needs. And then there's also the state programs that bring money into local governments for local roads. The CHIPS program, which is a formula-based program that brings money to the county, to the towns, to the villages. And this potholes program is kind of a new one to deal with potholes, which, we all know we need to do. And I guess one of the questions is whether that $100 million, which is welcome, should just be put through the CHIPS formula or some other way. So we're hoping to get the CHIPS funding increased as well, so that our local governments have the funding they need to address the local roads, in addition to our capital plan to deal with our state roads.
Of course. And, I know Bill had a question. We were talking about it before in terms of the gas tax. I know it's, somewhat related just in terms, I thought, of the CHIPS funding. So in terms of that, Bill, I don't know if you had any, additional follow-up on that. But what are your thoughts on that process? Because I'm not sure, as it was reported, again, if that would impact CHIPS and these other infrastructure programs.
Yeah, I heard some rumblings about someone offering, let's get rid of the gas tax for a little while and help the people out. But and then there was also the reaction to that was, oh no, the sky will fall if we do that. Have you heard anything about that?
Well, it's been a topic of conversation really throughout the country right now, right? Whether it's at the federal level or the state level, as being a way to kind of give people a little bit of relief. We did, as a conference, propose a more robust inflation package, which, dealt with also essential items and stuff like that, really focusing on the sales tax aspect of it, as opposed to, as federally, you have these taxes, and a lot of them are dedicated taxes that go into road funding. So there are people that are kind of saying, hey, it'd be great to do this, but are we now basically foregoing funding that already goes to help fund local roads? So I can appreciate that, but certainly I think we should be looking to do something, and particularly on our sales tax. And, the state, we talk about the gas tax, but there really are several different taxes that make up the tax portion of somebody's gas receipt when they're going to fill up their tank.
It looks like your cell phone bill. It looks like your cell phone bill with $10 for this, $15 for this guy to look at it, $2 for that guy. Yeah. And the man on the street's reaction to somebody who says, well, if we get rid of the gas tax, it's, we're not going to fix the potholes. Well, guess what? You're already not fixing the potholes. So what am I losing? I get potholes and I pay the tax, or I get potholes and I don't pay the tax.
Yeah, and the thing to remember too, like the sales tax aspect of it is the one that maybe there's a little bit of a argument that with the increase, some of the others are per gallon taxes and things like that. Sales tax is something different, based on an amount. So there's almost a little bit of a windfall coming when costs are increasing. Whether it's gas, whether it's any other essential item for the state, because the cost of them is going up. And the sales tax, as we know, is a percentage of the cost of something, as opposed to something that's a per gallon thing.
Right.
Of course.
Now,
and
I have a question though. We've had a lot of COVID funding, and I'm curious as to whether, because it's kind of rare when I read the paper to find any governing body that actually comes in with a budget on time. They're usually, it's like union contracts for cities. It hasn't been signed in 5 years. They've been working without a contract forever. So I'm just curious if, because most of these municipalities seem to be flush with COVID money, is that making it easier to juggle these budgets and actually get them passed in time?
I think it certainly puts us in a very different place than we were before the American Recovery Plan Act was passed. That put a huge amount of money into state and local governments. We got $12.6 billion, just kind of, no strings attached money, not for any particular things. Obviously, we've got tens and tens of billions of other funding over the last couple of years directly, for specific things, health, education, all of that.
Right.
But it definitely has put the local governments in a very different place than they thought they were going to be as things were taking a nosedive. Really, for us at the state level, there's still a good chunk of that money in the budget this year. And I will say that will be part of a big part of where the action is over the last few weeks here to getting a budget done.
Right.
Is that the governor basically put aside a $2 billion pot of COVID relief money to negotiate with the legislature. How much of this needs to go into the emergency rental relief type programs? How much of this needs to go for any other initiatives that we've had over the last few years that maybe we need to put a little bit more money into?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
that
a
makes
lot
sense.
easier to answer those questions when you actually have the money.
Yes,
Right.
Yeah,
100%.
as opposed to the battles over austerity and how much the Medicaid redesign and all those types of things. But I know, to your point, Assemblyman, you were mentioning the inflation relief and consumer assistance plan that I know your conference certainly was advocating for. But I saw an article recently that you were featured in, and it was regarding veteran services and a big package. I think around was it $500 million, if I'm not mistaken, for veteran services. So to your point, can you speak about why that's an important issue? We know we have a lot of, if not the most, veterans here on Long Island in the state. So can you talk about why that's such a priority?
Yeah. So let me start by saying this actually was spurred a little bit by a conversation we had recently. We actually, the college was nice enough to allow us to use their facilities a few weeks back with my colleague Jake Ashby, who traveled down from the Capital Region, who is our ranking member on the Veterans Affairs Committee and has been doing these regional forums about PTSD. And, we had the conversation that night, heard from, a number of local people about the need for mental health resources, but also, our veterans organizations, as we know, our local American Legions, our VFWs, these halls kind of operate on tight margins to begin with. And in large part have not been able to rent out their halls for the last few years. So some part of that is really kind of trying to get them access to some funding, almost kind of like we've talked about with restaurant relief of other organizations. So it's a $500 million proposal that we had. Half of it would be capital. Basically, we have the SAM program, and there's well over $2 billion that gets reappropriated every 2 years in that program. It's a state municipalities grant program. And right now, it's only eligible for local governments. It's not municipalities. A veterans organization would not be able to access that. So this would take a chunk of that. So it's not new money. It's money that's actually there already in the budget. It would take a chunk of that and make veterans organizations eligible for it. The other piece would invest in different programs like the Dwyer peer-to-peer program, which is a very successful veterans PTSD program, and even kind of expand some of these mental health initiatives that have been so successful with veterans to help, our first responders and our healthcare workers who obviously have been through trauma over the last few years to try to help them as well.
Definitely important. And I know you were involved with that No Surrender Veterans PTSD initiative and some events they've had here locally. Certainly, like we said, that this is an easier conversation versus what can you need to cut from, Veterans Affairs and Veteran Services. And to that point, mental health, you just raised it. That's obviously, front of mind when it comes to basically a lot of different things, including public safety right now. And the point is, what is being discussed? I know Kendra's Law was something I think that was talked about. I'm not sure if that's in the budget or if that's standalone legislation, but what do you see as maybe making some continuing inroads? I know there's discussion about more social workers at schools, etc. So what from your perspective might make a difference, hopefully?
Yeah, I think that we all recognize on the mental health and in our schools with our younger kids, there's a need. They've been through a very difficult time. So certainly our schools need some resources so that they can provide those services to the kids. But yeah, like I said, it's across the board. It's making sure that our first responders and our healthcare workers and our veterans have a place to turn. When they're in crisis, so we avoid a tragedy. And much like we talked about with kind of the mental hygiene sector as a whole, those investments I think need to be made now. Everybody's been through something that I don't think we ever expected to deal with. I was
going to ask you about, I heard some rumblings, I guess it was probably a month or two ago, about Nassau University Medical Center being involved in or turning into a veterans hospital. Has there been anything about that?
I don't know specifically about that, but it has been, there's kind of a lot going on there right now, obviously, with a change in administrations at the county level. Trying to find ways to make sure that we preserve, this safety net hospital for our county. Yeah. And certainly, there is space there to provide, those types of new services. So I think, the county executive and the county legislature, I'm sure, is looking at that.
Of course, but nothing in the budget from the state side of any takeovers or anything like that. It doesn't seem at this point. So, but just keeping on what we were just saying, public safety, because obviously that's front of mind, and many of your constituents, kind of daily processes. There was discussion that the Governor Hochul, will seem to consider some additional maybe tweaks or changes, add some additional bailable offenses. Can you give us your thoughts on that? On what maybe needs to be done still, and what maybe you might see as somewhat, kind of a good idea?
Yeah, details are kind of trickling out on this plan that I think has been described as a 10-point plan. It sounds like recategorizing a number of offenses to be bail eligible, as well as, basically kind of, some catch-all type provisions where somebody's been accused of multiple crimes over a short period of time. But I still think, I think those things would be welcome, but I still think we're somewhat nipping and tugging around the edges here. Like I said, I haven't had the opportunity yet to fully look at her plan. But I think the premise of the whole system that was created a few years ago, of kind of the laundry list of crimes and all of that, as opposed to just having some real judicial discretion, where, a judge can look and say, okay, this person's dangerous and go through obviously findings on the record and all of that. I still think we should be striving to create the best system we can. I know many on the other side look at it and say, hey, New Jersey has this dangerousness standard. They rely on an algorithm that they feel might be racially biased and all that. Well, then, we're New York. Let's go put together the best system anybody's come up with. Make sure that we have proper metrics and proper findings, but still have true judicial discretion.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of one size fits all algorithms. I agree. Yes, I agree with you there. I think it's an attempt to streamline and economize, but it's a disservice to everybody when it finally rolls out, because you realize each individual instance needs attention. I agree with you. That
goes to the discretion conversation and things like that. Yep. But we can't expect that a lot of that will be hashed out, you think, before the budget, or you think a lot of this will be a standalone package after? I think the governor's putting it out now, probably to put it on the table for the budget.
I just think, in my experience in the assembly, something like this is more likely to be done in the budget. I think the votes would be there outside of the budget. The question is, would the leadership in the two houses be willing to put it on the floor and perhaps, rely on a good chunk of votes from the minority parties to actually pass it?
Right.
Fair enough. So we will certainly stay tuned to that. And there are many other things. Obviously opioid, that epidemic is still an issue here on the island and throughout the country. Obviously talks about environmental resiliency and funding like that. I guess can you talk about maybe just quickly, because we have only a few more moments, how has this been different than working with your predecessor in terms of the governor, Governor Cuomo? Because I know he's in the news and there's discussion about him possibly trying to make a comeback. I see some commercials and even discussion about running as on a third party or something like that. So just your kind of big picture takeaways. I know obviously there's still things I'm sure the different conferences have, not kind of come to terms on, but just the overall, I guess the difference between those two.
Yeah. So, they're obviously very different people in terms of their personality. The thing I liked about Governor Hochul coming in was she has served at, several different levels of government, from town to county to Congress. So I hope that would create a more collaborative approach. I'd be lying if I told you I'm not disappointed thus far in terms of that there's been really no outreach to those of us on the other side of the political aisle. I mean, we all recognize that, the Democrats control both houses of the legislature and the governor's office, but we certainly have plenty of good ideas on our side of the aisle. And I think, many of them are being, are proposals that we've seen in some of these budget proposals and things. So I hope that she will, reach out to our side of the aisle and maybe begin some dialogue so she can hear about some of the needs of our districts throughout the state. But it's a different personality, and it's kind of, it's crazy seeing, ex-Governor Cuomo out there talking about maybe jumping back into the fray. But you never know what you're going to see in New York politics.
Bingo. I was just going to say, anything is possible. And, when I heard that last night, I had to do a double take. I said, wait a minute, was that a voice in my head, or did somebody actually say that?
We'll stay tuned on that one, certainly. But, there are other changes. I know some congressional representatives will be not running for their seats. It seems like Congressmember Garbarino will be the senior statesman of the Long Island delegation pretty soon. So we'll stay tuned to that. But back to just some local things in the last moments that we have you here. There have been some changes in leadership at the Long Island Railroad. There's now Ms. Catherine Rinaldi taking over for Phil Eng. Just what are your thoughts on that? I know we had a conversation with Newsday's reporter Alfonso Castillo, the transit beat, and we're expecting to speak with Ms. Rinaldi in the next week or so. So what are your thoughts on her having to helm both, big transit agencies?
Well, I'm not going to claim to know a ton about her. Obviously, maybe somewhat parochially, Mr. Eng was a local guy from my neck of the woods. So that's always a positive in that type of position. Obviously, the railroad is in a place now that they're kind of, getting near the end of the third track project, which was obviously a major thing and ran through, most of the district I represent. And we're at a place that certainly, coming out of COVID, hopefully people getting back to the office, ridership maybe getting back to levels and really figuring out what the new normal baseline is of ridership. She's gonna have some work to do, and hopefully we can all join together and try to make sure that this next phase of the history of the Long Island Railroad is one that meets the needs of our commuters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is what we all want to see, certainly. And we know that's important. We'll be watching that. And just in the last second here, I know your district does represent a lot of Ukrainian constituents relative to Long Island, certain portions, and New York have the most Ukrainians outside of the country itself. Just what are some of the things you're hearing? What are some of the positive things, takeaways of what the community might be doing here to the parishes and some nonprofits?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of organizations trying to collect medical supplies and other items. We're working with the Lakeville Civic Association. Actually, on Saturday, we're going to be. On Sunday, we're going to be collecting. We're going to be collecting items. We're also setting up some collection points at different local, at local locations. So if anybody wants to check out my Facebook or Instagram, the locations are up there, and a lot of it has been through faith-based organizations to try to help the people, because it's heartbreaking what we're seeing, it's hard when it's that far away to figure out how you can best help, but we're going to try to do anything we can to help the people of Ukraine and certainly help families that are here that are trying to get information and hopefully make sure that their loved ones are safe.
Yeah.
Yep. Amen to that. I know the state also looking at divestment, whatever it can do, on that level. But we really appreciate your time and all the efforts for those constituents, obviously with family members in very harrowing situations, and everyone throughout the district overall. So thank you so much, Assemblyman Ed Ra.
Thank you.
Thanks for carving out a chunk of time. I know you were like in between two meetings, and you took a minute. We really appreciate
you along the way.
Yeah.
Take care. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Be well.
Be well.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Bill.
Yeah.
Very good conversation with our local representative here. A lot on his plate as the budget process comes to a close in the next few weeks. So we will stay tuned and obviously have more folks on to discuss that as we go. So good stuff, Bill.
Now, just to continue on, we're very happy now to welcome our next guest, Jason Turnier. He's the managing director of Camps R Us, a summer camp with 11 Long Island locations. And he's going to discuss with us a recent Newsday article on summer camps, the owners getting ready for what is termed a more normal season, which we probably haven't seen in 2 years, I guess, right?
Yeah, just about. Thank you so much, Bill. I'm very happy to be here. So we are really excited. We've gone through 2 pretty interesting summers, as everyone's gone through 2 very, very interesting years. And, what we've been going through personally and as families and as members of our community on Long Island has been mirrored at camp, really, trying to do our best to take care of each other and trying to do our best to give kids a normal summer, or as close to a normal summer as possible. This year, it's finally looking like we're coming out of the pandemic and able to bring back what camp really is like. So all those modifications over the past couple of years, a lot of lessons learned, and keeping some of those great lessons that we learned in place, but really coming back to a full experience this summer. So we're very excited. Right.
What's funny for me is my perspective. I've been on Long Island my whole life, so I've seen the day camps and then the sleepaway camps, they call them, and it went from kind of a little cottage industry to now this is a full blown industry as far as
I would say so.
Yeah,
it's very interesting. The first day camp ever in the United States actually opened on Long Island. It's Pierce Country Day Camp, and those are friends of ours up in Roslyn. And they were the first ever, I'm going to get it wrong, about 106, 105 years ago they opened. And they kind of still set the high bar for what it means to be a day camp in our area. But day camp is really popular. And recently, in modern times, with families working, full time, both parents having to be out of the home, camp has really replaced summer daycare and replaced a lot of the traditional ways that kids were supervised over the summer, and camp just provides a lot more of the things kids need outside of school, that experiential education, learning physically, emotionally, socially, intellectually too at camp, but really developing relationships, building friendships, learning how to be, a kid, but also growing into what you're going to become as an adult. And camp really provides the avenue for that. And it's become a full year job for us. I'm a full year camp professional. I often get the question, we always laugh in our industry when we get it, what do you do the rest of the year?
Right.
And that's, we do this. Yeah. So Bill, it's crazy, but when you think about it, we register campers starting in August for the next summer. We run registration through our summer. We hire our staff. We have over 350 staff at our campuses, and we're a big camp with 11 locations, as you mentioned. So it's a lot of work. And then all of the programming and activity prep and special events and trips and chartering our buses. We do over 250 bus charters every year. So even just coordinating all that and getting everything prepped, it's a lot of work. And we have a great team, and but it takes a year. We say we live 10 for 2, 10 months out of the year to prep for the best 2 months of the year during the summer.
Right, man. I mean, I couldn't plan a trip to DC for a family of 4. Okay, I couldn't even do that. When I think of the numbers, when the pandemic, I mean, the last 2 years, were there actually attendance at camp, or did you close down altogether?
So we stayed open through the pandemic. Attendance was lower than normal. We were actually close to 70% lower than our normal numbers the first year in 2020. But we opened specifically, we knew if we could open, we would open, because a lot of our families and a lot of their parents are essential workers. They work in healthcare, or they work municipal jobs, or they work in industries that needed them there, and they needed a place that was safe for their kids. And that's really part of our experience, is that parents can also have that peace of mind while they're working or taking care of their family's needs. We want them to know that the kids are safe and that they don't have to worry from 9 to 5. Their kids are being taken care of as if their parents were there. So we opened. It was a completely different summer. From activities. We usually run a lot of activities off-site. We do a lot of trips, and we take the kids off campus quite a bit. That all went away. And what was interesting about it is we only found out that year that we could open about 2.5 weeks before our opening day. So we replanned our entire summer in about 2 weeks, and got it off the ground. Our entire staff stayed on. We didn't lose one staff member. we were considered essential workers at that point too, and really wore that as a badge of honor and said, we're here for these kids. We're here for each other. And we had probably what was the most amazing summer ever. Mm-hmm. And what kids really needed at that time, after being out of school for 3 or 4 months, is to be together safely, to enjoy time together, to reinvigorate themselves socially, and to be kids and to be out of their homes and enjoying what they love. And it was fantastic. Yeah. We opened last summer, and that was a different story because we were still under a lot of guidance. That shifted again closer to the summer. So we were really moving quickly as we got closer to the summer, but our enrollment came way back. So now it was all these extra campers and closer to normal numbers, but we still had a lot of guidance in there with COVID. So it was still kind of an interesting summer. Back to trips, back to some of the things we did, but not quite normal. Yeah. But we made it through, and I got to be honest with you, our staff were amazing through both summers and really, took it, with both hands and made it work and held it together. And, we did really well with it.
It's not funny. It's all a matter of perception because growing up, and it only came out because this idea, women took a big hit during the working thing, because they were the first ones that were expected to stay home. And we never really looked at it like that. And camp, we never looked at, I guess we weren't really being honest with ourselves. Oh, this is a great thing for the kids to do in the summer. Yes. And you pointed it out, it's also childcare. And, that's a big chunk of money for every family in America, whether you have a babysitter come in, whether you bring your kids someplace, it kind of makes me feel a little better that we're actually addressing that and talking about the child care idea of it, not just it's a great summer getaway. Well, it's a lot more than that. It is an essential service. Now, I happen to have my boss here is a customer. He sent his kids to summer camp, so he's got personal experience with it. I went to camp as a kid, but I went to a 4-H camp, and they certainly were not on the levels. We didn't take trips away from the campground. We stayed on the property, but we had physical exercise to do. We had to walk down the bluffs on the North Shore to get to the beach, that kind of thing, and it was a great experience for me. I can't imagine the kind of experiences you can give to a kid by, plugging into all of these things during the day. But Shawn, what do you think of, how do you like the summer camp experience?
When I was a kid, I personally hated camp. I wasn't the kind of person that liked to go to camp. I'm not an outdoor activity kind of person. But, my personal story, in full disclosure, my kids have gone to Camps R Us for the last 2 years. My personal story is previously my kids went to a different camp, and that camp decided not to open in 2020. Oh. And upon recommendations from friends is how we found Camps R Us. And, you mentioned it a little before, Jason, about the amount of changes you had to go through in 2020, and then some of those stuck through in 2021. So I'm curious if you can quickly talk about some of those things that you did have to change, such as social distancing and temperature checks and hiring a nurse. I don't know if you ever had a nurse on staff prior to 2020, but I'd love to know that. And then what is obviously we're still 3 months out and things could change like that with COVID. We know that, but what are the early plans on how normal will 2022 be?
It's a great question. Hi, Shawn. And we are really excited. Having Stephanie and Tyler in camp's been great. And what's funny is, and Bill, this is kind of really funny, Shawn and I have never met in person.
Okay.
Because of the way the pandemic has hit us.
There are so many people I haven't met in person in the last 2 years.
And that's going to change this year, hopefully. So, it's great to see you, Shawn, and talk with you. We've had great conversations. Shawn is a very engaged parent and is really a partner with us, as most of our great parents are. He's very active in our parent association. He's always asking really great questions about the program and driving conversations. So I appreciate that. I wanted to say that.
Let the record show. Let the record show the money I've given him is for my kids to go to camp, not to say what he just said. That's
okay. The things we had to change. Going back through the questions you were asking. When COVID hit, we started making adjustments right away based on what we saw in the world. So we knew we were going to have to pick up with PPE, right? We were going to have to pick up with masks. We were going to have to pick up with sanitizer, hand washing stations. temperature checks on campus, much social distancing, but also how could we do that at camp where so many kids need to be together to actually participate in what we have planned? I mean, the camp doesn't work at a distance. You really kind of need to be close to the other kids. So working with our local camp organization, we're part of a professional organization called LICAPS, Long Island Camps and Private Schools. It's a bunch of the top camps on the island. We all came together and we were invited to join this group that we weren't a member of at the time to work together on best practices and make sure that every camp's standards of health and safety were at the top levels they could be. So through our American Camp Association, which is our accrediting body, they put together what they call the field guide with members of or representatives from the American Academy of Pediatrics, American Camp Nurses, Association of Camp Nurses, and CDC recommendations. And we helped to guide the Department of Health into what guidance was appropriate for camp as well. So they wrote up some great guidance for us, but some of it just wasn't feasible. And we helped to rewrite some of that and help them to find a good balance between health and safety and running a program that would be worthwhile during the pandemic. So some camps didn't open, as Shawn said, and that was their choice. And, that's really based on feasibility and what they thought they could do safely. And everyone had different feelings about COVID when it was still very new. We were 3 months into it when camp opened in 2020. So that's very new compared to 2 years plus now. So, and we appreciated those folks for doing what was right for them, and a lot of them came back in 21 and now most of them are all back in 22. And the biggest change for us is the learning that we had during COVID. So learning about, we were always good about hand washing, sanitizing, things like that. But now we're vigilant and we actually schedule it into our program. So you have to hand wash or sanitize coming into camp and leaving camp. You have to hand wash and sanitize between activities. Of course, using the restroom and lunches and snacks and all that kind of stuff, but we're keeping that. When we did our social distancing, we were allowed to use something called cohorts, which is a term we were all familiar with coming into the pandemic.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because prior to 2020, Bill, have you ever heard the word cohort before?
Only in a college atmosphere. Yeah, or as a study cohort.
That became a huge camp word in 2020. So
so that's how we grouped our kids. Cohorts were a maximum size number of kids in a group. So we had specific cohorts. And that's one of the things the Department of Health worked with us on. The original cohort size was going to be 12 to 15. We got it raised up to 30. And that was important because moving kids around a campus and the required number of staff that we have, it just wouldn't have worked at smaller numbers. So keeping those kids together, masking up indoors, keeping our staff in masks, all those great things that we did really helped us to achieve our goal. And in 2020, we had no cases of COVID on camp. And there were only about 6 or 7, I think, in most camps on Long Island total. In 21, we actually had more cases because there were more kids. And the guidance was eased a little bit and we learned. And also the other thing, too, is other communicable diseases, other, contagious diseases like strep and Coxsackie and just the common cold came back a little bit, whereas the year before, all that went away because we're always masked up. So we saw it a little bit, but we were able to mitigate that and manage it in a way where we could still keep the kids active at camp. We kept quarantining to a minimum, but it was necessary in some cases. And, we really work with our parents. We have to trust the parents are doing the right thing. We did daily health checks, as Shawn mentioned. That was a questionnaire that you got on your camp app in the morning, or you just completed it quick when you arrived, just some questions, the same questions you've seen at a lot of organizations. Do you have a fever? Have you traveled recently? Been in contact with anyone known to have COVID? We did the temperature check, and we've had a few kids over the past couple of years who came in with a fever, unbeknownst to parents. Like, how often do you remember to check your kid's temperature in the morning when you're rushing out the door? And so they would get checked, and they'd have to have a negative test to come back, and it was a process. And we did all this kind of stuff. We had our 14-day health check before camp. That's, again, it's a cumbersome process, but all our parents really dove right in and said, whatever we have to do to make this work. And to keep each other safe. That's the thing. All of this work we did, all of the things we learned, and everything we asked for campers and parents to do, it wasn't just to protect themselves. It was to protect each other. And that's a big thing. And I say this all the time, Shawn probably gets sick of me saying, we're a community, right? So we thrive and rely upon each other.
Well, it's great that you help each other.
Only with each other. Yeah, it's the campers, their parents, our staff, even our alumni are part of that community and supporting us from afar. So we've learned a lot, and we're going to keep a lot of that they call them NPIs, non-pharmaceutical interventions, which is, just the fancy way of saying we're going to keep hand washing and sanitizing. We're going to keep checking kids for their physical health. And so there's certain symptoms that require you to go home, but those are pretty standardized now.
Yeah.
And parents understand that, but we don't foresee this year, and talking about getting back to normal, as Shawn mentioned, we don't foresee a lot of guidance this year. The Department of Health and parents really trust that the camp community at large, the full industry, kind of knows what they're doing. And they trust us to really take care of their kids in the best way possible.
And I just want to remind our listening audience that they are listening to 90.3 WHPC, the voice of Nassau Community College, and we are speaking with Jason Turnier, the managing director of Camps R Us. So we went right to the horse's mouth. You're the managing director. So I'm curious that, I know that, sending, two kids to camp, is an expenditure. Do you have any scholarships or things like that for kids that won't necessarily have the bucks to go to school, go to camp for a whole summer?
It's a great question, Bill. Our camp is actually designed, and part of our mission is affordability. And so it starts with us trying to keep our prices intentionally lower than most other camps. And we provide that by, modifying what we offer. There's certain amenities we don't have at camp in order to keep that cost down. And then we also offer flexible enrollment. We offer flexible payment options where you can pay throughout the year, and a lot of different discounts. So no one really pays, if you want to say, the full retail price for Camps R Us. There are a lot of camps on the island that offer scholarships. We're not one of them that offers them directly from our organization. What we do instead is we partner with other vendors or other organizations or partners that we have and provide opportunities for them to fundraise using free camp as a raffle or a fundraiser. So all of our camps are at parochial schools. So all of those parishes, fundraise and give away different weeks of camp, and they can raise money that way. And folks can enter, a relatively inexpensive raffle for those kind of things. We also work with social services in both Nassau and Suffolk County. Mm-hmm. So for families that, qualify for those services and reduced rates of camp, we accept payment from them. And then we can also combine that with all of our discounts too. So it's not one or the other. Right. We really try to keep camp affordable because it is a lot of money. Even for us as a less expensive camp, it's still a lot. And it's a lot for parents to come up with, especially the way the economy is. And with inflation now and every other cost of living going up, mm-hmm. we really try to curtail that with camp and provide value. Yeah. And know that, again, we're a full day program. We're full summer, 8 weeks. And, we're about half the price of most of our, contemporaries on the island. So we start there. But there are a lot of organizations that folks can reach out to if they're looking for some financial assistance or they're looking for scholarships. We call them camperships in the camp world. Oh, right. They can reach out to their, again, if it's social services, which is income dependent, any of the local organizations we partner with. I mean, we give away donations just about every day. People are calling, free weeks of camp here and there. So when they're local community organizations or fundraisers, and then also the American Camp Association, New York and New Jersey affiliate, they're located in Manhattan, but if you email them or call them, they have a camp replacement service. It's free. And they actually help folks find a camp based on all kinds of factors, whether it's needs for transportation or certain activities or financial assistance. Right. And they have programs available to folks who need that extra assistance and can't quite afford camp, just to make sure there's a place for every kid who needs to be in a camp program this summer.
Yeah, right. And I'm sure that, since I was a kid, that those numbers have grown exponentially. I mean, camp used to be, I can't even think of, it wasn't like a general thing where kids even knew about summer camp. I mean, the really rich kids were going to France for the summer, or on some exotic trip someplace.
That's where he's opening the 12th location.
Yeah, right. It costs more for a flight than it will for camp. It's so funny. But Bill, you're right. I'll tell you I'll tell you a little history. Our camp was founded by my parents. My parents, Joanne and Gary, founded Camps R Us way back when in 1993. Wow. And before we had our own camp, I never went to camp. My dad was a teacher. My mom, usually had off for the summers. She had just gone back to work full time as a registered nurse. She was at Nassau at that time, Nassau County Medical Center, now NUMC. Right. And my dad was working summer programs just to make ends meet. And so between a combination of babysitters and things like that, they made it work. But at that point, they just couldn't. So they couldn't afford camp for us. Me and my sister at the time were 9 and 6 or 10 and 7, I forget. when they first had the idea and couldn't afford the local camp. So he stayed home and lost the income from the summer jobs and wound up spending more money because, as you know, if you have kids, whenever you go anywhere or drive anywhere or buy lunch or go to the movies or go to the local pool or the bowling alley or whatever, costs a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it adds up, over 40 days. If you compare it to how long the camp season is, that's a big chunk of change. So thinking that there were other parents in their position, they thought of this idea, and he took his teaching and coaching background. He took my mother's health expertise as a nurse, and they wrote a program and tried it, and it worked. And they were right. And there were a lot of parents who needed this kind of service and needed a reliable place to go that they could afford, that wouldn't break the bank and wouldn't put them in a financial situation where they had to choose between their children's care and being able to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And so you're right, though. The cost of camp has gone up over the years, just like everything else. And that happens. But, we really keep an eye on that. We really try to focus on providing the value for the increase in cost. And I can tell you, we went up a little bit this year. We didn't raise prices during the pandemic, but we went up a little bit this year. But the amount of activities we've added and the events and theme days and the types of trips we're going on, I mean, I've never seen a summer come together the way this summer is coming together. It's going to be phenomenal.
We're gonna get Bill. We're gonna get Bill in the escape room.
Oh yeah, Bill, you can totally visit this summer. We're open to visitors.
Yeah, well, I think
Shawn will put you on his list.
I think the kids better watch out, because I think the parents are going to want to start going to camp. I mean, it's sounds a lot more fun than going to work.
It really is. Well, and on days when you can visit, and I hope to see you, Shawn, at camp this year, because we can invite parents in now for visiting days. We don't have a particular visiting day. The door is wide open under normal circumstances. Of course, during COVID, it was kind of shut. Yeah. But this year, we're back to our open door policy. As long as you call ahead, we're going to have our talent show where you can come and actually watch the kids live instead of a recorded video or a crummy kind of Zoom that was going on. Yeah. And then also you can visit on trips. We'd love to have you out and see what camp is like. And we love to have parents be there. Parents don't come and chaperone, they come to visit and participate. So we have a lot of opportunities for that, because it is their summer too. It's parents. Yeah. The camp experience involves parents, especially day camp, where you're seeing your kids every day. You're experiencing camp through their eyes. And you're awesome. Partnering with us in what they're learning and doing to really reinforce how they grow up. It's really great.
That's awesome. I'll nominate Bill to wear the mascot costume.
Oh my goodness! Yeah,
real quick,
wait till you see it, Bill.
We only have a few minutes left. I wanted just to touch upon. You talked about how your parents started the camp because your dad was a teacher. Are most of your counselors teachers during the year, or are you hiring 16 and 17-year-olds? Like, how old do you have to be to work there, and are you hiring now for this summer?
I'm so glad you asked, Shawn. We hire starting at 15 years old, 10th grade. Once you finish 10th grade, you can be a junior counselor. That's our base level internship. It's a paid internship. And then we hire high school students and college students as counselors. And then most of our leadership staff is teachers. Our directors, our program directors, they're all educators, and they work the other 10 months of the year, which is a big burden on them to come into summer right after the school year. But they are fantastic. We have over 40 directors at our camps, and it's an amazing team. We meet monthly with them and we talk about this. But as far as staffing goes, one of the great new things, and it actually is great that we're talking with Nassau Community College, we're going to be offering a summer program where kids can earn college credit when they work. It's a brand new program. We're offering 3 credits through an experiential education program that relates to a liberal arts degree. And so we're going to be releasing information on that next week. So not only can you come and work the summer and basically get paid to have fun, work with your friends, change the world when you change the life of a child, right? It's really that meaningful and impactful, but you can also benefit your future career and kind of jumpstart your leadership training for any career in the future too.
Yeah, 3 credits is nothing to sneeze at. It translates into money.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And saves you time from sitting in a classroom. This is all asynchronous, on-the-job, hands-on learning with only a couple of little assignments during the summer. So it's a really great program, and it's being offered for the first time, and it's fairly inexpensive too. When we hire folks and they're interested in that, we can talk about that, and it kind of relates to their overall compensation too.
Yeah. Tell me something. Okay, so now you have 11 locations. How many kids are we talking about in total?
Total, we're expecting this summer around 1,800 total, which breaks down, there are larger campuses and smaller campuses. Shawn's kids happen to go to one of our larger campuses. That's our Hicksville campus. That campus would have totally enrolled about 250 kids. maybe 200 on campus daily. But our average enrollment at a typical campus is about 150 to 175. And what's great is that's broken down from kids starting at 3 years old all the way up to 14 years old. So it's a lot of different age groups. They all run their own schedule. They have all the different activities set up. We have 18 daily activities that they have on their schedule. So they don't see everything every day, but a great variety of stuff going on. And we also, like I said, we're a parochial school. So we have great indoor and outdoor space. So we can modify for weather, for high heat, for rainy days. We can still run a full program. And we do travel quite a bit. There's always a group going somewhere, especially this year coming back and adding more of the field trip element of camp. So it sounds like a lot of kids, and we're pretty big, but we've managed it over the years, and the kids really thrive. We have small groups and small camper to staff ratios, and the supervision is always at a maximum, so we can really engage and facilitate the camp experience.
Right. Boy, that's a lot to handle. I mean, 1,800 kids is whew.
I can barely I can barely handle 2 at home. So.
That's why you get a break during the summer.
Yes, exactly.
So, but our staff are fantastic, and we have over 350 staff, and they come from the communities where we have camp. They're all locally hired. We're what we call a hyper local camp. So everyone's community based, and everyone is really dedicated and focused on what the kids need. And like I said, it's a community for campers, for parents, and for staff. That experience is everyone's. So we're really all invested in doing our best for each other. So
final word, and the main reason we brought you on today, is 2022 normal? Is it like the camp was in 2019, or do you still see differences?
I can't say 100% because you never know if the Department of Health throws a curveball or something happens. But based on where we are right now,
I was going to say, if camp opened today,
we are 100% normal right now. Yeah, wow. And we're looking forward to keeping it that way.
Take a snapshot because it's going to,
Recording, you heard it here.
Right.
Yeah, us and all the camps on Long Island too, just to share, with our colleagues. Everyone's looking forward to what feels like a perfectly normal summer. So we can't wait.
And do you have an online presence? You have a webpage or?
Yeah, we do. Thanks for asking. So you can find us at campsrus.org. It's camps, the letter R, us.org. We're on all the socials at Camps Are Us, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. We've got a great community online, our parent association that Shawn's a part of too, over 1,000 families in there. And they get the insider scoops and the inside tips on getting ready for camp. We got a lot coming out this spring. As you know, our camp calendars were just published, our new website launched. So it's got some great information. We're really excited to share everything we have in store.
That's great. Wow. Sounds like fun. I'm jealous. I want to go to camp again.
Will definitely come and visit us, Bill.
Yeah, maybe I will.
Bill will get you there to play some music on a day.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Also in some bands.
Maybe, yeah, that would be great.
Rock and roll.
Come and DJ at the Shindig or something like that. We'll talk about that.
We play live music. We play the real thing.
Oh,
bring it. Yeah.
I love it. Even better.
Thank you very much for coming out and talking to us. Jason Turnier, the Managing Director of Camps Are Us.
It was such a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much.
Interesting. Very interesting stuff. Well, I think the clock on the wall is screaming again and telling me it's time to move on out of here. We thank you for joining us. And just to remind you, you can catch this week's Long Island News every Friday at 3 o'clock right here on 90.3 WHPC.